Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joe Warther, and I'm a senior lecturer in accounting here at Georgia Southwestern. And I want to do a Chapter 14 summary for everybody today. I know our exam is until the middle of September, but I just felt that it'd be good to do this summary for you because I pretty much did this for my in-class class on campus. And so I don't want you people left out. So anyway, let's go to page 754 to 759, the first part of chapter 14. What I want you to know, okay, is management functions, okay, planning, directing and controlling, okay, I want you to know what all three of those are about as far as a management style in accounting, okay, what we do as management accountants. And I definitely want you to know the difference between managerial and financial accounting. The difference between managerial and financial accounting. Okay? Now, when you come over here to page 757, to organizational structure, look at the organizational chart and be able to tell me what the controller and the treasurer are responsible for. The controller and the treasurer. The rest of it, pretty much, you should have learned in your management class. I may ask something about who are the owners of the company, and if we wanted to know who the real owners of the company, it of course is the stockholders. Over here on page 758, Code of Ethics, I want you to know what the Sarbanes-Oxley Act is all about, SOX, and that is at the bottom of page 758. And for these pages, 754 to 759, all those questions will be just conceptual or definitional type questions. So really, with those pages of the chapter, what I really want you to do is just study those pages. There'll be no computational type questions from those pages. Now, when we get back here to manufacturing costs on page 760 and 761. Of course, product versus period. You must know the difference between a product cost and a period cost. And a product cost, of course, the makeup of product cost is direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. Okay? Those are your three product costs. And another name for product cost would be manufacturing cost. Okay? So direct materials, direct labor, manufacturing overhead would be your product cost. Your period cost would be any administrative expense that you would expense in the period that it happens. For example, the president's salary, the payroll cost, the utilities of the administrative building, any of those types of expenses you would deduct on your income statement when they happen. Now, the difference between the product cost and the period cost is when you make a product, and you put these three costs into the product, that product, once it's finished, may go sit in the warehouse. And when it sits in the warehouse, it's called finished goods inventory. So really, it's an asset when it's sitting in a warehouse. When it finally gets sold, it becomes then cost of goods sold, which is the largest expense on the income statement. So it goes from an asset to an expense. Period costs go right to expense in the period that they happen. So again, your product cost, direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. Okay, now what is manufacturing overhead? Well, you got to look on the bottom of page 760. Okay, manufacturing overhead, and you have to read that little paragraph into page 761. At the bottom of page 760, 761. Okay, and manufacturing overhead, and this is very important as we move forward in the course, you have to know your manufacturing overhead costs. Now, I tell everybody in the classroom, it is any type of cost that happens that does not have the word, that does have the word plant or factory. For example, plant depreciation, factory utilities, factory rent, insurance in the factory, taxes on the plant, any of those costs, supervisory salaries in the factory, maintenance personnel in the factory, all those costs, indirect materials like glue, staples, nails, screws, indirect labor, of course, would be supervisors, maintenance people, that would be indirect labor. Okay, indirect labor, indirect materials, all these other little costs that happen in a factory, that's what's considered overhead. So you got to be aware, if it's not direct materials or direct labor going into the product, most likely it's manufacturing overhead. And if it's not manufacturing overhead, then it's an administrative cost, and of course administrative costs are period costs. So that's very, very important to know. Now, in the chapter, we have a new statement. It's called the cost of goods manufactured statement. And I'm going to put up on the board here the just an overview of how this statement should look. Okay, basically what this statement is manufacturing cost plus beginning work in process, okay, minus ending work in process, and WIP is work in process, equals cost of goods manufactured. Okay? That is the raw equation for figuring out the cost of goods manufactured. Now, you will see the statement in the book, and it's quite more cumbersome. Usually with manufacturing cost, they break it down and they talk about, they list all the little manufacturing overhead costs. I'm saying that once you list all those costs, you total them up and you put it in, you make them manufacturing. A total manufacturing cost plus beginning work in process minus ending work in process is cost of goods manufactured. Okay, so that is the new statement that we introduced to everybody in chapter 14. Okay, you had what you had with Accounting 101 was a cost of goods sold statement. Beginning inventory plus purchases minus ending inventory was cost of goods sold. But with this type of accounting, you have actually, and you can use beginning work in process plus manufacturing costs minus ending work in process as cost of goods manufactured. You can flip-flop these if you want, okay? Because beginning work in process gets added into manufacturing costs for the period, and then you subtract out ending work in process and you get cost of goods manufactured. Okay, so that's something new. Another thing in the chapter is we have 3 inventory accounts, where in Accounting 2101 you only had inventory, merchandise inventory. Well, here we have raw materials, work in process, and finished goods. Okay? Raw materials, work in process, and finished goods. And the flow of cost start in raw materials, okay? The raw materials used come out of raw materials and go into work in process. The direct labor comes into work in process. That was called wage expense in Accounting 2101. In this class, we call it direct labor. Okay, so what goes into work in process? Raw materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead, your 3 product costs. Now, when the job gets finished, the job moves from work in process into finished goods. Okay, these are called inventory accounts. This is called finished goods inventory, work in process inventory, raw materials inventory. Okay, 3 inventory accounts in managerial accounting. So the job finished, the job moves into finished goods, sits in finished goods until it gets sold. We send our marketing department out, they find a buyer, we sell the product, and it moves from finished goods into cost of goods sold. Okay? And that's the whole flow. Raw materials into work in process to finished goods and cost of goods sold. Work in process is the job that you're working on. That will house all the product costs, direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. Once the job gets finished and completed, it moves into finished goods. You can look at finished goods as the warehouse that houses all the completed jobs, and then the jobs are sitting there, or the products all sitting in finished goods, and then when it gets sold, it goes to cost of goods sold and gets expensed on the income statement. And of course, sales minus cost of goods sold equals gross profit or gross margin. Okay? And that of course was a concept we talked about in Accounting 2101. Now that's pretty much it. When I look back in the back part of the chapter, there is some things, there's some definitions on page 770. I'd like you to know, if you look at the top of page 770, I'd like you to know the value chain, all the costs in the value chain, okay? All the costs except for the production costs, all the rest of those costs are period cost. The production cost is the only product cost. So you have other costs like delivery and research and development and customer service and marketing. Those are all period costs, okay? But I want you to know those, I want you to know the value chain. And then I want you to know what just-in-time inventory is, what that's about. And I also want you to know what enterprise resource planning systems are about. Just mainly know the definition of them and what they're about. You know, where do we use them? Why did we bring them? Why did we develop them? And pretty much that should do it for the chapter. So the last part of the chapter would just be this stuff. The meat of the chapter, of course, is the inventory accounts and the flow of costs from raw materials to work in process to finished goods to cost of goods sold. And then the beginning part of the chapter would be the different things that I mentioned with management accounting, the difference between management accounting and financial accounting, and what directing and planning and controlling, what they're all about, and the treasurer and the controller's function, and what the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, SOX, is about. You know, those concepts would all be in the beginning part of the chapter, and that's pretty much what, you know, you'd have to study that part. Go over the multiple choice questions. This is a multiple choice test, and the key is knowing how to do those multiple choice questions. There's the self-test multiple choice questions at the end of each chapter. Go through them, do as many multiple choice questions as you can over and over, and you should do well on this test. I know that it's a lot of new material, but it's really the multiple choice that teach you, other than this beginning stuff at the beginning of chapter 14. It's really the multiple choice that teach you most of the chapter. Thank you very much, and I'll be coming by and stopping by with a chapter 15 summary, in a week or so. I am on campus, so anybody that's close to campus can give me a call, and because I'm here 4 or 5 days a week, and I'll be glad to sit down and work with you. Thank you very much.